Welcome to this solo podcast, a gentle and thoughtful journey into something that's become so deeply woven into our lives that we often forget what life was like without it. I'm talking about social media, that endless stream of updates, reels, hashtags, likes, and comments. It's our digital neighborhood, our social playground, our virtual diary, and for many, even our identity. But what happens when we step away from it? What if just for 1 week we hit pause on all of it? No scrolling through Instagram, no checking stories, no liking posts, no tweets, no snaps, no TikToks. Just life as it is without the filter of a screen. This podcast is my personal reflection on exactly that, spending 1 full week without any form of social media. I didn't just delete the apps. I logged out, shut them down, and challenged myself to live as if they didn't exist. And let me tell you, it wasn't as easy as it sounds. But before I dive into each day of this digital detox, I want to talk about why I decided to do this in the first place. Why go off-grid in a world that's constantly online? It all started with a moment, a tiny, insignificant moment, but one that stuck with me. I was at a cafe sipping coffee, having a quiet moment to myself. And like clockwork, my hand reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I wasn't expecting any messages. I wasn't checking for anything urgent, I was just checking. And then I realized I had done this at least 10 times that morning. Maybe more, scrolling without purpose, swiping out of habit, searching for something though I didn't know what. That's when it hit me, I wasn't in control anymore. My attention was no longer mine. My free moments, my silence, even my boredom, all of it was being filled. Distracted, numbed by the constant buzz of the digital world. So I asked myself a simple question: what if I stepped away for a while? Not forever, just a week, 7 days of disconnection. 7 days to see what I would notice, what I would feel, what I would miss, and maybe what I wouldn't miss at all. I told myself, let's see what happens. Now, let me be honest, I love technology. I think social media has its place. It connects people, spreads ideas, creates communities. It can be beautiful. But like any powerful tool, it can also consume you if you're not careful. And somewhere along the way, I felt like I had stopped using social media, and it had started using me. I needed space, I needed quiet. I needed to remember what life felt like without a screen in front of my face. So that's where this journey begins, with a small decision, a curious heart, and a willingness to feel uncomfortable. In this podcast, I'll take you through each day of that week. Not in a dramatic, overly intense way. Just honestly, I'll talk about the moments I struggled, the ones I found peace, and the surprising shifts that happened when I turned the noise off. But before we begin, I want you to take a deep breath. Yes, right now. Inhale and exhale. Let's slow down. Let's remember that we are not machines. We are not meant to be constantly updated, refreshed, or recharged like our devices. We are human beings, and sometimes we need to disconnect in order to reconnect with ourselves. Whether you're thinking of trying a digital detox yourself, or you're just curious what it feels like to live without social media, this podcast is for you. It's not about judgment. It's not about quitting social media forever. It's about exploring with honesty and compassion what life looks like when we take a step back. So join me now as we walk through day 1, the silence, the discomfort, and the strange new stillness of a life unplugged. Let's begin. Section 2, Day 1, the silence. Day 1 began with the tiniest bit of hesitation. As I reached for my phone in the morning, almost mechanically, I remembered, no social media today. No Instagram scroll while sipping coffee. No Twitter check while lying in bed. Just me, awake, present, with no filtered window into anyone else's life. At first, it felt like standing in a quiet room after years of background music. Oddly empty, quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful yet, more like disorienting. My mind reached out for noise, like muscle memory trying to find something that wasn't there. It was in those first few hours that I truly began to realize just how woven social media had become in my daily routine. I didn't even notice how often I used to check my phone. It wasn't boredom driving it, it was habit, it was reflex. I opened my phone instinctively, more than 20 times before noon. And each time I stared at the blank space where those apps used to be. I had deleted them all the night before. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Snapchat gone, but my fingers still tried to find them. Like they missed a part of themselves. I'd always thought of social media as something I used. But now, on day one, it felt more like something I had become dependent on. It had slipped into the tiny cracks of my day, waiting in line, taking a break, walking down the street, even brushing my teeth. Those were all social media moments. And now, stripped of that background noise, I had to sit with the silence. It wasn't an easy silence at first. I felt twitchy, restless, like I was missing out on something. My thoughts raced. What if someone sent me a meme? What if something went viral? What if I'm already behind? That dreaded feeling, the fear of missing out, kicked in hard. But here's the thing. As the hours rolled on, something subtle began to shift. Without the constant flood of information, my mind began to slow down. I noticed more around me. The way sunlight spilled across the floor, the quiet rustle of wind through the trees, the taste of my breakfast, the sound of my breath. And strangely enough, I started hearing my own thoughts more clearly. Not the fast, anxious kind, but the quiet ones. The ones that usually get drowned out in the sea of scrolling. I remembered things I hadn't thought of in weeks. Random memories, old ideas, questions I had been ignoring. I went for a walk in the afternoon. Something I often do, but this time, I left my phone at home, just walked. No podcast, no music, no checking directions. Just observing. It felt awkward for the first few minutes, like I was missing my favorite accessory. But eventually, it turned into something else. I noticed people, I noticed birds. I noticed a mother comforting her child on a bench, and a man whistling a tune as he rode past on his bicycle. It was like watching a movie unfold in real time, and I was actually part of it. Not just someone behind a screen. I won't lie and say I felt magically at peace. I didn't. I still had that tugging urge to check, to update, to share, but I also began to realize how rarely I was fully present before this. Even when I wasn't posting, I was planning what I would post. Even when I wasn't scrolling, I was thinking about what others might be posting. It was always there, a hum in the background. Now that hum was gone, and in its place was silence. There was a moment in the evening when I sat down on the couch and felt the weight of that silence settle in. No notifications, no messages from friends reacting to a story, no curated content to scroll through while zoning out. Just me, the room, the stillness. I almost reached for my phone again. Almost, but instead I just sat there, letting the moment be what it was. It felt strange, but also strangely good. Later that night, I journaled about the day. Something I hadn't done in months. I wrote without a goal, without hashtags, without worrying about what it looked like. Just thoughts on a page, honest, raw, imperfect. And that's when it hit me. Social media often turns us into performers, even when we don't mean to be. We share to connect, yes, but we also curate. We shape our narratives, we filter, both literally and emotionally. Without realizing it, we sometimes live for the story we're going to tell, instead of living the moment as it is. Day one reminded me what it felt like to not perform, to just be. No filters, no captions, no audience, just presence. It wasn't easy, and I won't pretend I didn't feel the pull to go back. Just for a second, but I stayed with the discomfort. I leaned into the silence, and somewhere in that space, I began to hear myself again. It was only the first day, but already, something inside me was beginning to shift. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly. Like a slow breath after holding one in for too long. Tomorrow might be harder, or it might be easier. Either way, I'm staying the course. Let's see what day 2 brings. Section 3, Day 2, Withdrawal. Day 2 arrived with a heavier silence. The novelty of no social media had worn off, and what remained was the reality of its absence. It wasn't just the apps that were gone, it was the structure they had given my time. The tiny dopamine hits, the distractions, the escape. I woke up, reached for my phone again, muscle memory still hadn't caught up, and then remembered. Still no social media. I sat up in bed and felt a little lost, like I didn't quite know how to start the day. I used to check my feed first thing in the morning, not out of any real curiosity, but because it was a ritual, something that made me feel plugged in, connected. Now I had to start my day with myself. I brewed my coffee and sat down with a book instead of my phone. I tried to focus, but my attention kept drifting. My mind craved quick, fast, scrollable content. Something to fill the gaps, something to click, something to react to. But there was nothing. That absence triggered a strange sense of withdrawal. Not just mental, almost physical. Like my fingers itched for stimulation. I found myself tapping surfaces, opening random apps just to see motion. Anything, movement, color, noise. I realized in that moment how much social media had trained my brain. The infinite scroll, the constant updates, the rapid rewards. It was like being on a mental treadmill that suddenly stopped, and I had to catch my balance. The day moved slowly, minutes felt longer. Not in a painful way, just unfamiliar. I found myself staring at the ceiling more often, sitting in silence, thinking, and then overthinking, with no online world to tune into. I started tuning into my own thoughts, and some of them weren't easy. Doubts, insecurities, memories, questions I'd buried beneath the noise. Social media had been a buffer, a place to go when things got too heavy inside. Without it, I had to sit with the weight. But here's the thing. Even though it was uncomfortable, it wasn't bad. It was real, raw, human, necessary. I went for a run in the afternoon. Music in my ears, but no notifications pulling me out of the moment. I felt my feet on the pavement, my breath in rhythm, the air in my lungs. I ran not to track it, not to post about it, but just to run. And when I got home, I didn't reach for my phone. I reached for water, for a shower, for rest. Later that evening, I sat outside as the sun set. No filters, no boomerangs, just the sky, turning gold, then orange, then a deepening blue. It was the kind of moment I used to photograph, share, caption with a quote. But this time I just watched. And in doing so, I realized something. Some moments don't need an audience. They just need your presence. I ended the day with another journal entry. My thoughts felt more grounded than yesterday. Less restless, more introspective. I still missed the ease of distraction, but I was also starting to appreciate the clarity that came with its absence. Day 2 was harder, but it was also more honest. Let's see what Day 3 has to offer. Section 4, Day 3 Reconnection. The morning of Day 3 felt different. I didn't automatically reach for my phone when I woke up. Instead, I just lay there listening, breathing, feeling the quiet around me. It was the kind of peaceful moment I had forgotten how to enjoy. No flashing screens, no new messages. Just the sound of the morning itself, birds, distant traffic, my own slow heartbeat. And for the first time in a while, it felt enough. I made coffee, and instead of scrolling, I sat by the window and watched the world pass by, people walking their dogs. A child on a bicycle, the wind moving gently through the trees. I was watching life not on a screen but through my own eyes. Around mid-morning, I started to clean up my space. Something small, like organizing my desk, turned into a full-on decluttering session. As I worked, I realized something. I wasn't doing it to post a productivity update. I wasn't looking for validation. I was just doing it for myself, and that felt empowering. Later, I went for a walk, no headphones. No need for background noise. Just me, my thoughts, and the real world. I noticed things, little things, like the way a leaf twirled down from a tree, or how the sun played across a row of parked cars. These things had always been there, but I'd never really seen them before. That evening, instead of endlessly scrolling through reels, I picked up a sketchbook I hadn't touched in ages. I drew, I let myself make messy lines and imperfect shapes. It wasn't for anyone, it wasn't content. It was just me reconnecting with something quiet and honest inside. By the end of Day 3, I didn't feel like I was giving something up anymore. I felt like I was getting something back. Section 5, Day 4, Inner Noise. By the time Day 4 arrived, something surprising started to happen. The quiet outside me had stirred something loud inside me. Without social media filling every gap. Without stories and scrolling and notifications pulling me in every direction. I was left with space, real space. And in that space, my own thoughts became louder. Thoughts I had been avoiding. I started to notice little doubts creeping in. Had I wasted too much time in the past just consuming? Had I missed out on deeper experiences by living too much through a screen? What had I sacrificed in the name of digital connection? It was like cleaning out a room once the clutter is gone. You start to see the dust you didn't even know was there. And that was what Day 4 was, a day of sitting with the dust. I found myself reflecting on old friendships, some I'd only kept alive through likes and comments. Were they real, or just convenient illusions created by the platforms that said we were still connected? I thought about time, about how much I'd given to things that didn't matter. How many moments I'd let slip away because I was too busy trying to document them, instead of living them. And yes, I felt some guilt, but also clarity. Without the constant input, I had room to think. Deeply, not reactively, not distractedly, but slowly, thoughtfully. That day, I journaled for the first time in months. I wrote about my fears, my dreams, even the goals I'd been putting off. I didn't write for an audience. I wrote for myself, I wrote to understand. And I realized how rarely we give ourselves that gift anymore, the gift of uninterrupted attention. In the afternoon, I took a long walk through a nearby park. No phone, no camera, just my footsteps and the sound of gravel crunching beneath them. I saw kids playing tag, a couple lying in the grass talking quietly, an older man feeding birds like he'd done it every day for years. It was all so simple, and yet it felt profound. I wasn't performing for anyone. I wasn't consuming anyone else's highlight reel. I was just being. That night I sat outside under the stars, and I realized there's a whole world out here. A world that doesn't need filters or followers to be beautiful. A world I'd almost forgotten. Yes, the inner noise was uncomfortable. It brought up things I didn't expect. But it also reminded me, growth doesn't come in the noise of the crowd. It comes in the quiet moments, when you're finally alone with yourself. And for once, I wasn't trying to escape that. Section 6, Day 5, The Freedom of Boredom. Day 5 began slowly. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall for a few minutes, not in a dramatic way. Just thinking, or maybe not thinking, just existing. And then boredom hit. It was the kind of boredom I hadn't felt in years. The restless kind, the what am I supposed to do with myself kind. I didn't have notifications to check. No memes to scroll through. No online rabbit holes to fall into. At first, it was uncomfortable. I fidgeted, I wandered around the house. I stood in front of the fridge multiple times. Not even hungry, my mind craved distraction. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch. But then something incredible happened. That boredom started to turn into something else. Curiosity. With no algorithm serving me content, I had to create my own entertainment. I pulled out a dusty book I hadn't read. I opened the guitar case that had sat in the corner for too long. I sat on the floor and stretched, not for a fitness post, but because it felt good. And slowly, boredom became a gateway to creativity. I found myself drawing again, not for perfection, but for expression. I jotted down story ideas, something I used to love as a teenager. I tried a recipe I'd saved months ago but never made. The kitchen became an adventure, not content. That day I realized how powerful boredom actually is when you're not constantly filling the silence with content. You're forced to face your own imagination. You rediscover your own ability to create. Explore and entertain yourself. You get reacquainted with you. Boredom, I learned, isn't a void. It's space, and space is where new things are born. That evening, I sat with a cup of tea and looked out the window for nearly half an hour, just watching the colors of the sunset change. I didn't take a picture, I didn't share it. I just watched, and it moved me in a way a post never could. By the end of Day 5, I no longer feared boredom. I welcomed it. Because in that stillness, something beautiful was growing, not just peace, but possibility. Section 7, Day 6, Rediscovering the Real World. By the sixth day, something had shifted. What once felt like a challenge, being without social media, now felt like a relief. Like I had stepped out of a storm and finally realized how loud the wind had been. My mind felt clearer, my attention sharper, my emotions more grounded. On day 6, I made a plan to do something completely offline. I visited a local market. It sounds simple, right? But when you've spent so much of your time online, something like walking through a marketplace becomes a whole new experience. I walked past the fruit stalls, listened to people bargaining in soft voices, smelled the warm scent of freshly baked bread from the bakery on the corner. I made eye contact with strangers. I smiled. I had small conversations with vendors, real, unfiltered human exchanges. And it hit me, this is the world I'd been missing. No curated content, no comments or likes. Just presence, texture, life. I bought some flowers, bright yellow ones. Not because they would look good on Instagram, but because they looked happy. And I wanted that happiness in my home. Later that day, I went to a local cafe and sat down with a notebook. Not my phone, a notebook. I started writing, not for a blog, not for a post, but just for myself. Thank you for joining me on this deeply personal journey, living without social media for a week. Whether you listened all the way through or dropped in just for a moment of reflection, I'm grateful you shared this space with me. This wasn't just an experiment in disconnection. It was a path to reconnection with the world around me, with the people I care about, and most importantly, with myself. If this episode stirred something in you, maybe a question, a pause, or even a spark of curiosity, I invite you to explore your own version of digital quiet. Maybe it's a day, maybe it's an hour. Maybe it's just your next morning without checking your phone. Whatever it is, let it be intentional. You might be surprised by what you discover when the noise fades. Until next time, stay grounded, stay mindful, and remember, you are more than your notifications. You are here, and that is enough. Thoughts, feelings, questions I had been avoiding. And in doing that, I started rediscovering my own voice. I also noticed how much more I was listening. Really listening to people, to sounds, to myself, without the constant ping of distractions. Conversations became richer, slower, more sincere. I wasn't thinking about what to say next or how to respond with a witty reply. I was present. I also realized how much time I actually had. Time I used to claim I didn't have. Time that used to disappear into scrolling and liking and reacting. Now that time was returning to me, hour by hour, moment by moment. And instead of filling it with endless digital noise, I was filling it with life. By day 6, the world felt more vibrant. Not because it had changed, but because I was finally seeing it clearly. Without filters, without distractions. Just me, fully alive in the moment. Section 8, Day 7, What I Learned. Day 7, the final day of my week without social media. When I woke up, I didn't reach for my phone. Not because I was trying to resist, but because I didn't need to. I no longer felt the tug, that automatic, unconscious reflex to check, scroll, catch up. It was quiet, and I liked the quiet. I made my coffee slowly, sat by the window, watched the morning light spill across the floor. It felt like I was seeing my own home for the first time. I wasn't distracted, I was fully there. And that's when I realized something powerful. I hadn't just removed social media, I had reclaimed myself. Throughout the day, I reflected on what this week had taught me. It wasn't just about avoiding distractions. It was about becoming aware, deeply aware, of how I had been using technology not just as a tool, but as a shield, a way to escape discomfort, a way to avoid silence, a way to disconnect from myself while pretending to connect with the world. Here's what I learned. 1. Presence is a choice. And when you choose it, everything becomes richer. Conversations, meals, nature, even boredom. 2. Boredom isn't the enemy. It's actually the birthplace of creativity. It's where your brain finally breathes. 3. We're more addicted than we realize. not just to the platforms, but to the validation they give us. And stepping away reveals how much of our self-worth has been entangled in numbers, likes, views, comments. 4. Silence is powerful. Not just peaceful, but healing. In silence, things rise up, emotions, thoughts, dreams, things that need space to surface. 5. We don't need to document everything. Some of life's most beautiful moments are meant to be lived. Not posted, felt, not filtered. I thought I'd miss out, that I'd fall behind. But the truth, I caught up with myself, with my own needs, thoughts, and pace. I remembered what it feels like to live a life that doesn't revolve around constant digital affirmation. I reconnected with people in real ways through long phone calls, real conversations, spontaneous meetups. And more importantly, I reconnected with me. So here's the truth. This experiment may have been 7 days long, but its impact will last much longer. I don't think I want to go back to how things were. Maybe I'll return to social media, but differently. Mindfully, with boundaries, with intention. Maybe I won't scroll when I'm bored. Maybe I won't check likes for validation. Maybe I'll use it as a tool, not as a crutch. Because now I know what's on the other side. Clarity, freedom, peace. And I wouldn't trade that for all the likes in the world.